Hi, my name is Kate. This is my channel, Chapter Kate. Today I'm going to be doing a book review on A Tragic Kind of Wonderful by Eric Lindstrom. I first heard about this book through Emma Books on her channel. She was talking about a box that she curated, I believe. And she said that this book is one of the ones that she put in there. I hope I'm not wrong about any of those details, but I very well could be. I have been known to be wrong several times. So it caught my attention because she stated that the main character of this book has bipolar disorder, and as I've mentioned before, I have that. It's one of my diagnoses. And I was really interested in that because I've always been interested about mental health books that have that sort of as a central focus in the book. However, I was a little bit hesitant because I'm also not a huge fan of contemporary novels, so I had to kind of reframe my brain for that. I have a lot of thoughts about this book because I do connect with it so deeply, and a lot of my opinions on this are going to be based on my own experiences and my own just personal thoughts on it. That being said, my personal feelings and my personal experiences with bipolar disorder differ than anyone else's because everyone experiences it differently. Plus, with mine, I also have PTSD that kind of goes into it, so some of my symptoms may be different. So my first impression of this book, I looked at it and I saw there were the two halves. I thought that was kind of symbolic of bipolar disorder. However, I liked that one half wasn't just like bright and shiny and one half wasn't just, gray. But you can still tell that there's definitely two halves to this. I'm guessing this side's more of the upside because it's got a little more color, and this side's more of the depressed side because it's a little more groggy and blue. However, I like that it wasn't just the typical, oh, let's do happy sunshine and then dark gray, because there's more to it than that. Bipolar disorder is a big mix of stuff. It's not just up, down. There's a bunch of other stuff in between, and there's a lot of other stuff at work in that disorder. I was kind of concerned, since it's a contemporary YA, that there's going to be a lot of love stories kind of sprinkled in there. However, those that are in here are handled respectfully. They don't take away from the story, they add to it. It's more about her interpersonal relationships and the struggles with those, which is super important when it comes to mental illness. Interpersonal relationships are one of the first things that suffer, and it's one of the biggest things that can help. So I think that was a really important aspect to involve in this book. And also, it's not just all heteronormative relationships. There's a lot of sexuality questioning and things like that, and I think that's good for this age group, because even at my age, I'm still discovering my own preferences and my own myself. So I think that was really important for this book as well. So I had really high hopes for this book, but I also was very hesitant because I was concerned that they were going to use like self-harm as a shock factor throughout the book, like they do in so many mental health books that I've read, and I'm really tired of the kind of exploitation of that traumatic experience and just for shock value. There's more than one way to make someone feel something, and I think that using self-harm in every single book, while that's prevalent and that's dangerous, it is not the only thing that we experience, and it's not the only painful thing we experience. So I'm glad that they kind of explored other options of that. The main character, Mel, is the character who has bipolar disorder, and I connected with her more than I've ever connected with any character ever, because it's just subtleties in her characterization that are so relevant in my every single day life. And I attribute things to bipolar disorder, but I get tired of doing that because then I feel like I'm making excuses for myself, or maybe it's just in my head. And the fact that that was portrayed in this book made me feel more normal and made me feel like what I'm experiencing is real and not just in my head like everyone thinks it is. Mel was extremely relatable. She tries so hard to keep up with her moods and to track them, and she also really wants just someone to give her an answer to how to fix things. What do I do? If I keep tracks, will they be better? If I do this, will I be better? What can I do to be better? And I think that's super relevant with people with bipolar disorder. We want so bad to be able to predict it. We want to be able to prepare for it, but we can't always do that. We want to analyze it. We can't always do that. Not everything helps. Even if you want to help it, that just proves that it is a chemical thing. It's not going to be always in your control. There are things you can do to help manage your moods, but it's not always going to be in your control. And that is just so important for me to read in this book. And I made a lot of marks. Well, not specific marks, but I marked a lot of places in this book. So I marked purple for when I connected with something, blue when something made me tear up, yellow when something made me smile, green when I learned something, and orange when something happened that made me angry. Now, usually I use pink if the writer makes me angry, and I use orange if something just makes me angry in society that's present in here, and it's like it's not the writer's fault because it's real, but I feel anger inside. There are so many things I related to in this book. And I loved how even the smallest of things were addressed in here, like the feeling of being somewhere and feeling like you just have to do something. That impulse was just portrayed so playfully, and it kind of showed that certain parts of bipolar disorder can seem so much fun in the moment, and then, you know, afterwards you feel the regret and the guilt, and that just, you know, snowballs into depression. Another character I really want to talk about here is her aunt, as some people would say, but her Aunt Joan. They call her Hurricane Joan, and I've heard hurricane used to describe a lot of people with bipolar disorder. I know Halsey has a song called Hurricane, and Halsey suffers from bipolar disorder, or lives with bipolar disorder. I know personally I have a lot of people in my family who I see Hurricane Joan in, and she has bipolar disorder as well. And I love that the genetic part of bipolar disorder was portrayed in here, because I haven't seen that in a lot of books, and it is such a strong genetic disorder. Her Aunt Joan doesn't experience it the same way she does. Her symptoms are a little bit more fun for the most part. They don't put her in as much danger. However, she obviously, something is up, and she has a hard time keeping a job because she does live with them. And that is something I've also seen with people, adults with bipolar disorder. They have a hard time keeping and maintaining a steady job and steady responsibility. The next characters I want to talk about are Dr. Oswald and Dr. Jordan. One of those is her doctor, and one of those is a doctor that she works with. And I think these are probably the most unrealistic characters from my perspective. Not necessarily in, you know, in everyone's perspective, but in mine. These are psychiatrists, and one's a retired psychiatrist, but they're both very analytical, and a lot of psychiatrists I've seen move away from that. They also seem to give her a lot of room to speak, and they push her to speak, and they try to, you know, bring certain things out of her. And the psychiatrists that I've, you know, experienced for my own treatment, and some of the ones that I've worked with, I've noticed they don't really take that time all the time. They don't really pay attention to talking. I know my appointments are usually from 5 to 10 minutes long, and it's just, you walk in, you talk about side effects, you ask if they're working, you say yes or no. And the psychiatrists that I've had have not really given me anything to talk with them about. Or if I start talking, I feel like I'm just annoying them, or they're not really paying attention. They don't make eye contact. They're not really personable. Psychiatry is not quite as humanistic as it should be, at least not in my area. However, I do live in the South, and there's a lot of things that aren't, not as much focus is put in here, and that is one of them. That could totally be just my experience with that, and not everyone's experience. But the plot was really well done. It wasn't super predictable. I loved the way that it kind of moved along. The language was, you know, easily understood. However, it wasn't juvenile. I learned things from it. I learned that the way she tracked her moods was really interesting to me, and I'm actually using it for my mood tracker starting in July. I've been working with my bullet journal to do that, and I kind of used her system to sort of inspire what I'm going to be doing with mine. And at the beginning of each chapter, she even shows like what her mood is like. If you see this right here, is kind of how she tracks her moods. She has 4 animals on here: hamster, hummingbird, hammerhead, and Hanniganimal. Her last name is Hannigan, so she calls all of her animals the Hanniganimal. So the hamster is her brain. If it's running, then her brain's going fast. If it's stumbling, her brain is going fast and kind of making mistakes and kind of getting disorganized. If it's kind of at rest or something, then her brain's working very slowly. Hummingbird is her heart and her energy level. If the hummingbird is perched, her energy level is low. If the hummingbird is flying, then her energy is high, and she feels like she needs to like get out and run or do this or do that. Kind of goes in with the impulsive part of bipolar disorder. Hammerhead is her physical well-being. If she's not feeling so well, or if she's, you know, on her time of the month, things like that, then she'll mark that in there. If it's cruising, she's good. If it's thrashing or whatever, then that means she's not doing so good physically. And then Hanniganimal, that's usually where her mood really is. So if it's level, she feels good. She'll put mixed beside it if she feels like she's in a mixed mood. If it's down, then that means she's in the lower end of things. If it's up, she's in the higher end of things. And she kind of determines if she's got a mixed mood based on those things. Now, mixed moods with bipolar disorder are a little bit different than just being up or down. It means you have symptoms of both, and they're typically dangerous, because when you're down, a lot of times people might have thoughts of harming themselves, but they don't have the energy to do anything about it. When you're up, you experience euphoria and you have a lot of energy. So if you have all that energy and then you also have those bad thoughts, then you're more likely to do something regrettable, and that's when things get dangerous. So for one of my favorite quotes in this book, I wanted to talk about, it's one of my blue flags, so it's one of the ones that made me a little bit more emotional. she's kind of talking to her doctor at one point in this, and her doctor said something about her doing really well. She said she's not resistant to medication, and that's half the battle. And then Mel says, you know, I don't feel like I'm winning anything. And so her doctor says, battles are never won, only survived. And that part hit me really hard because with bipolar disorder, you don't feel like there's any way out. You definitely feel like it is a constant battle every single day just to survive. And even when you're not experiencing really strong symptoms, there are things that are just small that make every day hard. Even if you're doing pretty well, you feel like there's something that, you know, everyone's running this race in life and their weight's tied to your feet, but you're still expected to keep up with everyone else. You feel like if you say what's going on with you, what's keeping you back, then you're making excuses for yourself. And that might be something someone's told you at some point. That might be something that you've been telling yourself your whole life. And that's just really relevant throughout this entire book. Even the smallest everyday interactions that she has, you'll see certain symptoms in there. And you'll see her struggling with her interpersonal relationships because she doesn't tell any of her friends about her bipolar disorder. You know, that's kind of the premise at the beginning of this, that she's not really telling anyone. And I'm very open with mine, so my friends know about it. However, being open has its own challenges because people feel like you talk about it all the time when all you're trying to do is be an advocate for yourself. There are a lot of tough situations in this. There's, you know, a point where her aunt, who's not medicated, is she's trying to convince her, you know, medications make you someone else. And she's like, well, I like who I am with this. You know, this makes me feel more like myself. Well, I'm not on medications. However, I've been on medications and I've been off of medications, and I'm more level when I'm on them. However, you don't feel like yourself when you're on them. Some people do, some people don't. I have not found the right combination yet. And she also does something where she kind of disowns parts of herself. She said, well, that's not really me. This is me. I'm me when I'm on medications, instead of saying I'm me then and I'm me now. And I think that is something we all experience as well. I know when I'm depressed, I don't believe that's me. And when I'm up, I feel like that is me. Overall, this book is very well written. It's well informed and it's respectful. It doesn't exploit experiences of people with bipolar disorder. And I really wanted to thank Eric Lindstrom for writing this book because it touched me in ways that I've never felt when I read a book before. I just really appreciate it. I feel validated by this book. And I would recommend it to anyone who has bipolar disorder, has someone they love with bipolar disorder, or anyone who is impacted by mental illness at all, or who just wants to have a better insight into it. Yeah, go for it. Overall, I gave this book 5 stars because it was too impactful for me to give it anything less. Yep. I wrote a full review on Goodreads where I kind of went more in depth about the things that I talked about here, and I'll link to that. If you would like more of this junk, subscribe below. Bye!